Welcome back to another episode of Capes and Tights, a comic book and pop culture podcast. I'm your host, Justin. That's Adam. Adam is remotely from a random, undisclosed location that is secured by the Avengers. That no one knows where he actually is. No, I'm just kidding. He's visiting family, safely visiting family. I feel like we have to weirdly caveat that in everything we say. It's like, where are you? I'm in New York. Why? Why are you in New York?
Why are you in New York? Yes, I know. So Annie and I took 2 tests right before we left and got here, and we'd already been completely isolating for like 2 weeks. But yeah, so we're here. We're totally 100% safe.
What are you doing? I mean, we're not 100% safe, but you know what I mean.
We're not even close to 100% safe.
Well, that's the stupid thing we were talking a little bit off the air about, doing everything right the whole time, and it's going to be at that point where you're still doing everything right, and something's going to slip through. Some molecule is going to slip through a mask, or something is going to be like, I just ran to grab something from the car, and a neighbor said hi to me, and that's where you get it. And that's the scary part about the whole thing, is all of us who are doing everything, quote unquote, I hate to say the word right, we're doing everything we think is right, and one of us is going to happen. It's the same thing that happens in the world where the nicest people get cancer and the nicest people die in car accidents and all those things. It's just, you can't predict anything. But we'll see. But we can watch Hawkeye in the safety of our own homes.
We can.
And not have to actually go out to the theater, which we did do. Taylor and I ventured out. It was a very stress-inducing moment for me. It did level a little bit out seeing Spider-Gwen, No Way Home, because of what we were seeing. You know what I mean? If you were going to see some sort of documentary that someone's, roping you into going to see, obviously at that point, I probably wouldn't be okay. The stress level was a little high. Got it done, got it over with. Now no spoilers can actually hurt me. But I don't think we'll be going back to the theaters for quite a while. It just wasn't for me. And I mentioned that when I talked to Jabron last week. It just wasn't for me. And I realized the last movie that I saw in the theaters, Adam, was Spider-Man Far From Home.
I don't even know what the last movie is. It had to be a Star Wars.
Well, June 2019 was the last movie I saw in theater, and that was because, we just hadn't seen anything in the fall. There wasn't, something has to really draw me in. We talked about that, Taylor and I. It's just like, you have to be like, with the way that movies are nowadays and everything coming out, and there's the fact that, like, you blink an eye and it's on digital or streaming, and our TVs are so big and our sound systems are so well done. What is really the point in going to the theaters anymore? Like, we saw an ad at the beginning of the movie that was for, I forget what movie it was, some sort of action movie. But the whole ad for the movie was, this movie was made to go see in the theaters. And it was like it was like propaganda.
Oh, it totally is. I've been seeing that too. Yeah.
And I was just like, no, come on. There's nothing. And especially because like Bangor, where we live, the theaters aren't that great. You get nice seats nowadays. No. And we sat far enough away because we wanted to be, again, we wanted to be safe as possible. So we're like out back against the wall over to the side. But the screen was the same size roughly because of where we were. Relation. It was at home. And again, I mentioned this a little earlier. It's a 2.5-hour movie. It needed to be 2.5 hours. That's all I'm going to say. However, 90 minutes should be the rule for how long a movie is. If it has to be 2.5 hours, make it part 1, part 2. I don't care if it's part 1, part 2, and they come out weeks apart from each other. At 91 minutes, I had to use the bathroom. Like, that's like, it's just, it is. If you drink anything prior to going to see the movie, or eat anything or whatever it may be, I just feel like that's another bonus to watching at home. So that's my little rant I had there about watching Hawkeye, because Hawkeye is produced and released like a motion picture that you see in a theater. It's so cool. Or those movies now, or the TV shows nowadays. I'm gonna give a little back eye. So we are talking about Hawkeye. Spoiler warning, which is the stupidest thing we have to say because it is a review of Hawkeye. So we're gonna spoil it. It aired November 24th to December 6th. December 22nd. It's 6 episodes. It's cool because we're now in that model at 2021. Really, actually, I guess it probably started in 2020. That we're going back to weekly episodes of things, and I like that. It gives us the idea and the ability to, when you're around people again, or working with people, or talking, texting, or whatever, to discuss. Oh, I wonder what's going to happen, and we'll jump quickly to the end of this show, but really jump back in a second. Is if this was, binged at once, we would immediately know Kingpin and Vincent D'Onofrio was coming. And you would never have this build up to, I wonder if they're going to show them or what's going to happen. So having this episodic every week thing is big fan of mine. On the streaming services, they range between 40 and 62 minutes, which is cool too, because there's no like, like a sitcom is 22 minutes because of commercials and all that stuff. An hour-long TV show on a TV is 42 minutes because of commercials and all that stuff. They did 62 minutes. They did an episode there. It looked great at 40. Done. That's cool too with streaming services.
I've noticed that a lot lately with different of the Disney franchise, especially Marvel, is that, like if they tell the story in 38 minutes, it's a 38-minute episode. And I love that because, like you said, on normal, like slotted television, it's like, this has to be an hour. And you're like, I got like 35 minutes of good material. Well, fill it in,
Yeah.
And
you end up having a subpar product because of it.
Yep.
It's pretty cool. So the budget for the entire series is $150 million, which is hard for me to try to compare that because I don't know what other shows are made for. I know there's shows that are made for a lot more because like Game of Thrones and all that stuff are made for hundreds of millions of dollars.
Sure.
But $150 million, that's a TV budget. I'm sorry, a movie budget. And that's for a movie budget with a return of $10 a person, $12 a person, $15 a person going to see that movie in the movie theater. $150 million for a TV show is crazy to think about. But if you were to combine all those in, obviously it'd be a 6-hour movie, but say it's a 3-hour movie, combine it all in because of all the things and you do some edits. It's shot like a movie, like I mentioned. Like the quality of explosions, special effects, all that stuff is not your CBS, 8:00 at night, Thursday night TV show.
The cinematography I thought was really stand out in this versus some other Marvel, just different, franchises and whoever's directing it. But I thought whoever did this did a great job of like incorporating the city in a better way.
Yes. And so it's created by Jonathan Igla, and then Rhys Thomas and did half the episodes, I believe, and then Burton Birdie. These people, Burton Birdie, did the other half of the episodes, which I also kind of like, which is like more TV shows that are weekly, that are 26, 24 episodes. Usually every episode is done by a different person because they're stacking them. You know what I mean? So these are also pretty cool because a lot of times nowadays they're one or two directors that direct the entire thing. So you get a smooth continuity between the whole show. The other cool thing again about the whole cinematography, the whole idea that it's like a motion picture or a TV, like a big screen, big picture, is Christoph Beck did the composing of the show, the music, who had done like Ant-Man and the Wasp and a couple other things. That he does these big movies, and now you get these big movie people to do TV shows. It's pretty badass. And that, again, brings that whole MCU connection, I think, to it as well, that the music is so similar between the two. I think he also did WandaVision. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm pretty sure he did WandaVision.
Well, and the music was great. I mean, how it incorporated Christmas into almost everything. I thought that was brilliant.
And it's speaking of the Christmas thing, so it was 92% critics and 90% audience on Rotten Tomato, which is awesome. So I'll get that pass. Which is high. It's certified fresh and so on. But yeah, speaking of Christmas, there is a Christmas feel to it, but they didn't overdo it, which I like.
Nope,
it wasn't like
all.
It's more like your Iron Man 3 had that Christmas. It's at Christmas time.
Exactly.
It's more putting it in place. So you see like a wreath in New York City. You see lights in the final episode. They fight at what's it called?
Rockefeller Center.
And you see the tree.
That was fantastic.
But it's not like they're like, oh, Santa Claus is coming. It puts it in place and has a storyline through the 6 episodes that Clint Barton is trying to get back to his family for Christmas. Otherwise, there would be no real reason for him to quickly try to get back, right? I mean, okay, I want to see my family, but I'm not going to no one's like, oh, I want to get back to my family for the 4th of July. Like, Thanksgiving would have worked. Christmas would have worked, but Thanksgiving, you don't know in New York City what Thanksgiving is unless you show the parade. Like Christmas has this, it gives us this reason for him to get back to his family is because he wants to be there for Christmas. So they open presents together and celebrate as a family, which is pretty cool.
Especially when you consider his wild background with his family. I mean, that's nuts.
Which I love. And also like you mentioning that, the fact that him talking to his wife knows, hey, I know this. Like she knows he's Hawkeye. He has to do some things. And obviously there's that watch part of the whole thing that she's trying to help with and all that stuff. So it's pretty cool. And I do think he did a great job. I think Jeremy Renner to me is one of my favorite actors of recent times. And to see him get not crapped on, but kind of crapped on as being Hawkeye, like the Avenger that doesn't really need to exist.
Exactly.
To have him have his own TV show. And to me now, and I was going to say this at the end, but I'll put it right now. I think it's my favorite out of all the shows that came out in 2021 on Disney Plus, for Marvel at least. I do think that this is better, in my opinion, than WandaVision and Loki and those shows, What If, all that stuff, because I had that Marvel Cinematic Universe feel, that superhero feel.
Right.
No big bad. There was just something about it that made it wholesome to me, that it was like a side, what TV shows should be, a side story. Loki was a big world-changing show, and WandaVision, again, the big thing to it. What If obviously was massive consequences,
Exactly,
and all that stuff. This had this like, this is happening in the world that doesn't need. It answers the story of, or the question of, why is this going on? But where is Ant-Man? Why isn't Ant-Man and Captain Marvel helping with this? They didn't need the help because it's ground level mafia.
Yes.
Problems.
And we had a big talk about this in a previous podcast, I think, when we talked about Spider-Man, and like the only thing, the Spider-Man movies are so good, but they're so far removed from that neighborhood feel, which was such a big part of Spider-Man. So I think, like you said, what was neat about this was it started bringing that sense back into it. Like, well, of course, Kingpin. So then we start thinking about like Daredevil and all of these, like you said, these ground level, like they're dealing with crime. Like that's it, not cosmic beings, not like, so that was exciting to see that, like, maybe they're starting to open that door back up to like Hell's Kitchen and
the Defenders and all that stuff. I mean,
exactly,
it's cool because Spider-Man was that, when they brought him into Civil War, it was like they were fighting, that was a big battle between superheroes, and this, teenager kid was helping fight this battle. This was a little bit more believable with Kate Bishop, because she's this, young 20s person who has no background in actually fighting battles, but doesn't need to, because they're just fighting small neighborhood crime, really, and trying to figure out to try to get this watch back and so on. So, but Kate Bishop was originally in this, first appeared in comic books, just so everybody knows, in Young Avengers #1 in 2005. That's another cool thing to me, is I say not that old. She's not that old in comic book world. Like she's only been around for 16 years in the comic book world. So it's not like you're talking this people who were created in 1963, like Spider-Man. This person, Kate Bishop, as Hawkeye, or Kate Bishop alone, only has been around for 16 years, which is pretty cool. The series pulls a lot from Matt Fraction and David Aja's 2012 to 2015 run, which is pretty cool. Just get more comic booky on this. I know some people have read it, some people haven't. There's a lot of pulls from that, which is the most I've seen in Marvel so far. Like they pulled like elements. There's like scenes and like things that happen in the Matt Fraction series that happen in this TV series, which is like literally life versions of animated things, which is pretty cool.
It is cool.
Yeah. But I'll just quickly. So it stars Jeremy Renner, obviously, Clint Barton as Hawkeye, Haley Steinfeld, Kate Bishop, who isn't called Hawkeye at all on the show yet, but she will obviously take over the mantle, I'm sure, in the future. The other cool thing is Haley Steinfeld joins the world and ranks with this show of Marvel people who played two different Marvel characters. Haley Steinfeld is the voice of Gwen Stacy on Into the Spider-Verse, the Sony animated motion picture, which is kind of cool. So she's now been Hawkeye now, and she's been
that's cool.
Gwen Stacy, which is pretty cool, or Spider-Gwen. Tony Dalton plays Jack Duquesne. Alaqua Cox plays Maya Lopez. And again, she's Echo, and she's going to have her own spinoff series, but she's not called Echo yet in this show, which is kind of like, speaking of the Daredevil connection, it's kind of like Daredevil in season 1 on the Netflix series. He never was called Daredevil the entire time. He was just this guy that was fighting crime in the nighttime. And then eventually he became called Daredevil. But like, it's that time you and I were talking about, if we had superpowers, it wouldn't immediately have an outfit or a name.
Exactly.
You'd be Adam Morrisette, who can fly. And that's why I like the show Heroes for a while there too, because again, they're just people with superpowers. They're not superheroes. Was it Fra Fee is Kazi. Vera Farmiga is Eleanor Bishop, who's awesome. I love her. She's in The Departed. She was in The Departed. She's also on that show Bates Motel. That was out for a while there. Who did a really good job.
She was in the Conjuring series too, wasn't she?
So there's some big names in here. Linda Cardinelli, who's Laura Barton, who's Clint's wife,
Yep.
who's also been in the Avengers movies and things like that. Florence Pugh plays Yelena, who was in Black Widow. And then again, we talked about it, the return of Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk / Kingpin, which is awesome. And last but not least, on these people that I want to pick up is Jolt, the golden retriever, is Lucky the dog.
Yes.
Who did an awesome job. I love seeing Lucky there. That was really cool connection. Again, from the comic books, they pulled that out and made it into the movie or the TV show as well. So, as we get into this more, I want to talk about this. So the Christmas feel was awesome. It was kind of like a buddy cop show, which is pretty cool. The idea that they were working together, an older person and a younger person working together. I wanted to talk quickly about that. Clint Barton / Hawkeye is not a superhero. Like, not a superhero. He's not super powered.
Right.
Like in the comic books, he has this kind of like strong strength and all this. He has to have a little bit more than you and I would be. I couldn't be Hawkeye. Yes. You couldn't be Hawkeye.
No.
But that he has real life problems. That he's actually, like, you see him put ice bags on himself. He has cuts and scrapes and all that stuff. And that he actually is losing his hearing. He's like, what was the line? And something like, if you had that many explosions go off around your ear as well, you'd lose your hearing as well. Which is kind of cool, because then that Maya Lopez being deaf connection of him actually not being able to hear and knowing some sign language and things like that was pretty cool. And then you mentioned the cinematography. It was a well shot TV show. Like the angles and the car chase. I believe it was in episode 1 or episode 2, where she's like, someone's in the backseat basically with the camera and they're just spinning around. Yes. That was like that whole shot. It reminded me a lot of Shang-Chi and the shot in the bus or the tram thing, which was pretty cool.
No, it really stood out to me as like that cinematography looked different. Like it had that kind of, remember that movie with Tom Cruise where he's a hitman. I think it's Michael Bay or something that filmed it.
Yeah.
And it just throughout the 90s with a taxi driver. But like it had that feel of where like the city is like ever present, like always in every scene. So I thought that was neat, because we've talked about how the city for a long time was where all the action happened in like Spider-Man and stuff. So it's important to remember that like we're taking place in New York City. And
I love how you say that, because we just talked, we were talking a little bit off the air, is that I started watching the Transformers movies over again. And Taylor's at the end of the last movie, Taylor was like, I'm so glad we don't live in a big city. Like joking, but like saying like that's where all the big things happen. Like, things, if someone's going to attack something, it's going to be a big city. No one's coming to Bangor, Maine to have some sort of superhero battle. So I feel safe up here in Maine. We're good. I mean, hell, no one's coming to Portland, Maine for a battle. They're going to go to New York City, Chicago, all those places for those big battles. So yeah, having that is fun. Speaking of big battles, the way that they were, so let's back up here. So the Netflix series were supposed to originally, when the original Netflix series, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, and Luke Cage, and then the Defenders, all of those shows, including also the ABC Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show, were originally supposed to be MCU canon. So those shows were developed and produced and directed and all that stuff as MCU canon. They mention the Battle of New York in a couple of those shows. They mention Captain America and all these other things. And they're mentioning the ones from MCU. So they're mentioning Chris Evans, Captain America. Over time, when Marvel started to Disney Plus, probably in the back behind the scenes, started getting made and all that stuff, they slowly started to pull away from the idea that these shows were canon. Even like halfway through the seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they stopped referencing everything. It became its own thing. They did some time travel jump things and all that stuff. This whole beginning of this show sets it up saying, no. This show is 100% MCU canon, because we're going to show you how Kate Bishop saw in her penthouse building the Battle of New York from her view, and saw and showed us the actual thing, that this is like what was happening in New York City. She was around then, so she would have seen it, and how she saw Hawkeye and wanted to be a superhero and saw all that stuff. That was amazing. Like literally made the show right off the bat go, hell yeah. Because to Taylor, my wife, she likes the MCU stuff, but she doesn't watch a lot of the other stuff because it doesn't connect to the MCU. And so when she saw that it opened up, I think it brought her right in, be like, okay, cool. I know for a fact that this is going to connect in some way to the broader MCU picture. And that was badass in my opinion.
And like, and it's just, it's a good way to like, if you're jumping into the series, I think everybody now knows there was a battle in New York.
Yeah.
Even if you don't really watch everything. So that's a great like jumping in point for people that don't follow, like even me, like that's not my like favorite area of the MCU, but it sucked me in like right away just with that opening.
And it showed how big and you know, when we talked about the Iron Man movies, when we did our Iron Man review a few episodes back, was the whole like Tony was dealing with this. Like he had PTSD from the Battle of New York. And so it showed the Battle of New York is a historical moment. Like we all would know about 9/11 and the coronavirus, all these things as we grew up. These are the things that happened in our lives. People in the world will talk about the Battle of New York. And then they talk about the snap and so on and so forth. In this world, this is a historic thing that are in books. Guarantee you now, you know, we're now, what, 11, 12 years past that time.
Oh, yeah.
And technically, you open up a book at school and the Battle of New York is listed in that book in the MCU. So it's really cool how they had that connection. Yep. The other connection I thought was funny and kind of like, what the hell was the Rogers the musical?
It was like so... like at the same time, I was like, but of course, like we've had Spider-Man the musical, and we've had like
we can't mention that, dude.
I know, but it's out there, and so we have to talk about it because you know that's what that Rogers thing cracked me up, and I loved that was the post-credit scene.
Yes.
Like,
it was just
that
like
was
I was all pumped.
And
I was like, oh, what's gonna happen? They're gonna set up something cool, and all of a sudden I know where they just start singing the musical. I'm like, that's the post-credit scene. Okay, it's actually pretty funny. I'm not gonna take that into it. That's pretty funny. And in hell, you know what's funny about it is after I watched it, I was like, if I was in New York City and they actually had, like in real life right now, if they had that on Broadway, I would probably go see it. As cheesy as it was, I would be there.
If they put that on Broadway right now, it would be the #1 show, at least for a month or two.
It would be funny if they did it and they made it canon. Like the best part out would be if someone had a first appearance or there's some sort of serious thing that you had to actually see this on Broadway to get the bigger picture of what's going on in the MCU. Some sort of reference that you're like, oh my God, you know, the first appearance in the MCU of so-and-so was actually the Broadway musical that happened in New York City. That would be funny. And they could tour it. Like they could bring it around to other small venues and all that stuff.
Drop Easter eggs in but like, mark my words, the Rogers the musical is inevitable now. It might be maybe it's off Broadway, maybe, but like in the next year we will have Rogers the musical.
It would be hilarious just to do it for a weekend. Like they filmed it and you could buy it on DVD or whatever, and you actually had like some of the main characters be the people.
Yep.
Because some of these people have theater backgrounds, so it would actually work pretty well.
And I love the idea of like dropping some kind of like just major Easter egg, but you in the musical. So it's all because that's great. It forces people to like watch a different genre. And that's fantastic. So
and now with the whole thing we do now with live streaming and stuff like that, you could just put it on Broadway, buy tickets, you know, be there in person for full on, but then make it a live streaming event that
like
happens.
Like a pay-per-view kind of thing. Like,
it'd be funny. But I was like, I wrote in my notes here, Rogers the musical, ... And then as he was watching it and how awkward it would be if there was a musical about you and how awkward it would be to see you on the stage in a purple outfit that you didn't actually wear and just see that. And then obviously they pulled in the whole emotional part about seeing Nat and seeing Black Widow on stage and all that stuff. And his kids having to be there and the little girl waving at him and then having to leave and be like, oh my God, this is so stupid. I just thought it was great. I thought it was like that comedy that Marvel has in a serious show. To bring that comedy in there is just, you know, breaks the tension a little bit.
Oh yeah.
And to show that he's still reeling about Black Widow, but also not being like he's crying in a corner. It's a funny moment that he's remembering about his best friend.
But we've said, I mean, that's why the MCU works so well, because like they're smart enough to be like, some people like funny stuff. Let's give them some funny stuff. You know, some people like serious stuff. Let's do that. But like, let's do a musical. Like, that's fantastic.
Yes, it was unbelievable. And, you know, and then there's the first episode. We're not going to go episode to episode. Like we don't do that on here. We just talk about the generic show and fun things that we like. But like in that episode, they also showed Kate Bishop and how amazing of an athlete she was and how good of shooting arrows she was before she actually became connected to Hawkeye, which is pretty cool, which is also awesome. She did a great job. Kate, Haley Steinfeld, I think, was great. She had great acting. She had great humor. She played off of Clinton Barton and Jeremy Renner's character so well. You know, the whole seeing the return of Ronan was awesome. I have been a big Ronan fan. I have his first appearance in comics and all that stuff.
Yep.
And seeing that him show up in the Marvel movies is really cool. But we got this like this taste of Ronan. To see the actual repercussions of what he did while he was Ronan is pretty cool. Like, so seeing the Maya Lopez, seeing his like, oh, you killed my dad, and having a vengeance on that, like having that connection, and that's something to deal with, and the fact that he tried to forget this was even there, basically, and have it come back and see this. You know, Kate Bishop is dressed up as Ronan, and he pulls her mask off, and he's like, really? It's you?
Yeah.
What is like a 16-year-old girl running around as Ronan? Which is pretty funny as well. But yeah, I mean, although I guess we mentioned the actors at the beginning and actresses at the beginning, all of them were good. I don't think there was, I mean, his kids have never done it for me. When they were in the Marvel, like the movies, his kids have always been this like weird, I don't know, they just aren't good at acting. I hate to say that, you know, but otherwise everybody else was great. I loved the LARPing people were awesome.
The LARPing was hilarious.
Like, and actually making Hawkeye like an Avenger. You're like, in order to get your suit back, you have to fight me in LARPing.
Yep.
It was like it made this dude's life. Like, it was like, you know, I just LARPed against an Avenger, and he returned his suit back, which was pretty awesome, which is pretty funny. But
that's where Marvel's so brilliant. They know how many fans they have that like to LARP. So like, that's brilliant. Just make it fine and make it funny and make it something that's like cool to do. And
but I mean, again, we talked about the comedy that's mixed into drama and action in Marvel, and that's to the idea that I was talking to Jabron Graham from Briar Patch last week, is talking about how nothing in the world is fully serious, like fully 100% serious. You get a group of people together in a room at a funeral, someone in that room is telling a joke, not to make fun of the person who died, but there's something. You're looking at someone like, oh my God, can you believe they wore that to a funeral? Like, you're joking about something. And so the fact that this is like, he's trying to get this watch back at some point, he's trying to save, you know, make sure that someone else doesn't die because of Ronan, and yada, 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 yada. But there's still funny moments in it. The LARPing brings that comedy into it. And the tracksuit mafia, like, those guys are just
actually
stupid.
I made a note here about that I love, where they're driving around in the U-Haul and they're talking about tracksuits.
Yes.
Like, they're talking about other famous people that have worn tracksuits. Yeah, like the Sopranos and the Royal Tannenbaums. And he's like, we're not like the Royal Tannenbaums.
It's just funny. And that's in the comics, the tracksuit mafia exists. And the idea behind it is supposed to be this like in your face, obvious sarcasm. Like, there's not like, it's supposed to be like this tracksuit mafia that they're doing, you know, mafia style stuff, but they're not the most intelligent and well thought out group of people. That like the boss is, but everybody else is just these idiotic, stupid people. Because not every mafia is gonna be like Sopranos. Like, it's not like you're gonna have these people who are very good at crime but are just stupid people. And like the comedy at the end where he's like, I talked to my wife, we went and saw the other performance or whatever, and it was just kind of funny. And she's like, well, you helped me very, very much, thank you very much. And she's like, well, why are you doing this? He's like, oh, and he like breaks his arm. Like, that stuff's funny. It's like, you know, but it doesn't distract you from like Rogers the musical, the LARPing, the tracksuit mafia. It doesn't distract you from the actual storyline, and doesn't distract you from what's going on, the actual things that need to be talked about. But it brings that humor, like, okay, this is fun. You know, we're watching the new Dexter series.
Yeah.
Which is really good. But again, that's the whole thing, is about people getting killed. And like, that's the whole thing. There's not really much lightheartedness on it. So the whole time heavy. You're just like, oh. Yep. And so this,
my wife Annie, you know, she can't watch Dexter. It gives her nightmares every time, which is weird. She watches crime shows all the time, but Dexter can't do it. Like,
because it's believable that he, like, I don't know, the guy who plays Dexter is kind of like maybe he actually does murder. He's the guy who plays a guy on TV that works for the police department that kills people, but that he actually does it as the actor himself. It would be funny if he actually did kill people. So this 7th degree of removal, but he's playing a guy that's killing people on TV, but he actually kills people in real life. That's who he is probably in real life. He's actually killing people. But the Yelena return was great.
Which strangely reminded me, I don't know when you said that, of when the guy who wears the sword. I love that scene too. And he's like, so the guy with the sword is the guy that just got out of prison for being accused of murdering somebody with a sword. And he's like, weird flex.
He's just walking around with a sword. He's a great actor too. I loved him. He's
fantastic.
Yeah, he was great. And that spin, that twist of
was great.
everybody thinks he's the bad guy, but really it's the mom's the bad guy, and that she's doing it, but she's not really a bad guy. She's doing it because she's trying to save her family in a sense. Like
Hawkeye seems to be all about like moral gray area.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they talk like of that kind of what is a hero, what is an Avenger, like what is like we say all these words, but like Hawkeye's done terrible things as Ronin. So it's like it's fitting, is my point, I guess.
Well, it's the whole like rob from the poor to feed your family if you can't get food kind of thing. And so it's like, is it bad when you're doing that? It's you know, speaking of Dexter, that's the whole thing. The whole reason he kills people on Dexter is because they're bad people. He has a code that he sticks to, that he's killing these people because they're bad people. He's not killing good people. I mean, he killed Ronan killed Maya's dad because he was a bad person. So like, it's not like this. He's not out there killing, you know, Captain America. He's killing bad people. So you know, it is that aspect of it. And Yelena, I was talking about comedy. The Yelena comedy was pretty good too. Like when she met her up in the upper burnt apartment, like asking her if she wants mac and cheese.
Mac and cheese, yeah.
That was pretty funny. She's a great Florence Pugh was excellent. I think she pulls off her Black Widow character pretty well. The battle on the roof was great. I think that she added that whole element that she's trying to kill Clint, that's separate from the Tracksuit Mafia and Maya trying to kill Clint or Ronan. And it's like, but in order to get the cool thing again, the whole Marvel beginning part of this and the whole big world picture of the Battle of New York, you needed to know how was happening at Battle of New York, but they kind of explained it for you. So you really didn't need to. Like you could watch the show on its own, but you really don't know why Yelena is fighting to kill Hawkeye.
Right.
Without actually seeing Yelena's character get introduced in Black Widow, and then the post-credit scene in Black Widow, which is her showing the picture, hey, this is the person who actually made sure your sister died. And that's kind of like, so there is that connection again to another current movie. They also connected to an old movie as well, which is pretty cool.
Yes.
And speaking of Black Widow, this was the fitting exit of Black Widow that we really needed. It was the funeral, the eulogy of Black Widow, the discussion of him missing her and this whole thing, the Kate Bishop Hawkeye communication conversation, but then also the Yelena and Hawkeye conversation at Rockefeller Center was this like put a cap on it. Great. Black Widow was awesome. I really hope this is where it ends. I hope they can reference Black Widow again, obviously.
Right.
But we don't need to keep harping on the fact that he lost Black Widow. We all lost Black Widow. Like we all lost Nat.
Yeah.
Like, at this point, let's move on. So I hope this was the end. Like they gave this little fitting Yelena and Clint made up.
Yep.
Things are great. She picked him up off the ice. Okay, Black Widow's dead. We're moving on kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which I like, but hopefully that works that way, but we'll see. we never know.
No
stuff. Sometimes they start to keep harping. Like eventually all of a sudden I know our Iron Man's just going to show up again. Be like, he's not actually dead because that's just how comic book works, but we'll see. I think so. Yeah. Maya Lopez was great. Again, another amazing actress. She really is deaf too, which is, I love that stuff.
I do too. Yeah.
Like the fact that they actually got someone who was deaf to play someone who was deaf. And you know, there's plenty of actors and actresses out there that are talented enough to do things. Why not make the person do that? We talked about on that on Why the Last Man. The trans people on Why the Last Man were trans. They didn't just do that. They didn't hire anybody because they were good at acting to play a trans person. Trans played trans, deaf played deaf.
Exactly.
Again, and the couple big things as we get closer to the end. So the show itself was amazing, great pacing, great everything. The return of Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin is big, great. Bold letters on my thing. And so we saw that at the end of episode 5, there was a picture and it was like, oh my gosh, you know, what's going to happen? And then he had played a pretty good part in episode 6 of it. This brings us back to what I mentioned about the whole Daredevil Netflix stuff. So the question really is, and it hasn't been answered, is that the same Kingpin?
I know, right?
You know, we don't know if he's coming back as Kingpin and just because he's played a great Kingpin, so that they just, was
Right.
Was it an alternate universe? Is it in the multiverse kind of thing? All that stuff is still a question mark up in the air on what it is. I just think that I like him a lot as Kingpin. I think he did great on the Daredevil series, so I think it's really cool to see him back as Kingpin. He showed he's different than he is in that show. So that's the other thing, is he's way more powerful in the Hawkeye show than he was in Daredevil.
Yes.
Daredevil, he was just a big man. He's a mafia boss, a mob boss. The Hawkeye version of him, he's like super powered in a sense. He's strong.
Right.
He can take more battle damage, all that stuff. So, which is really cool.
Which is more of our like true Kingpin, who just was like oddly powerful and never really knew why.
And they did a great job with camera angles and stuff like that to show how big he was. I noticed that too. Like he's a big statured man. Vincent D'Onofrio is not a small man, but they made him with the low camera angles and the different things, and obviously they probably had him standing in weird spots, like they filmed Elf. I don't know if you know that, but like how they did the
forced perspective.
Yep. And so like that kind of thing where they like kind of like, okay, you stand a couple of feet this way and you stand a couple of feet that way, and we'll shoot lower angle. It makes you look massive, and I think that was the whole point behind the.
It was cool.
Yeah, it was really cool to see him back as him.
And like I said, and that's the kind of thing they do that's brilliant, is if this just kind of turns out to be, like you said, he's just the new Kingpin, but now we can change it a bit. Because, again, you and I always talk about the comics, and we know, like, if you read Daredevil, I mean, he can grab Daredevil by the head and just throw him around. I mean, he's a massive dude.
It's funny too, because Taylor was happy to see him, but she wasn't happy in a sense because she thinks her favorite Kingpin so far is from Into the Spider-Verse. The Into the Spider-Verse version of Kingpin was awesome. So she's like, "Oh, that's my Kingpin," like in her mind, which was really cool for me to say when she says that's my Kingpin, because that's nerd culture right there.
Oh yeah, that's deep nerd culture.
Yeah. But he likes it, and I mean, she likes it, and he was good. He was definitely a presence, and I can't wait to see what they do with him. Whether or not they just keep him in the shows, because that's possible. I mean, Echo, Maya Lopez is Echo / is getting a spinoff. She's getting her own show. So whether or not Vincent D'Onofrio just comes back for that show and plays him in that, whatever they plan on doing with Daredevil, I'm sure he'll show up in that. But I would like this would be, they haven't done it so far yet, is do the opposite and bring someone from TV to the big picture, big screen. So that's where I'd like to see also. I'd love to see him just show up in Doctor Strange or Thor, right? Thor, Love and Thunder, someone. I don't know, just throwing it out there. The ones that come out. Just have it out there that he doesn't have to be a big character. It doesn't have to be a big thing. He shows up, or they talk about him, or he's on a screen, a picture, a mob boss, be wanted by the police, kind of thing. Because they haven't done that yet in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is bring people from the small screen to the big screen, which would be kind of cool to see coming up.
And I feel like that, like, the Daredevil would be in my opinion, would be the guy I'd want to see. Like, I enjoyed all of those series, but like, I don't need Jessica Jones and like.
No, Jessica Jones could be a small.
We already lost that weird Iron Fist that we had.
Yes. Oh yeah. That. So and if they do end up bringing those in there, I don't have a problem with them bringing Jessica Jones back as Jessica Jones on the small screen. Put her on Disney Plus, do your own thing, or you can even put it on Hulu if you wanted to make it more like what Jessica, and she swears and she drinks and all that stuff. If you want to do that,
right? I
don't have a problem with Luke Cage coming back, him playing Luke Cage. I don't have a problem with what's his face playing Daredevil, Charlie Cox. I just think that some of them, Daredevil, I wouldn't mind seeing on the big screen again. I think it's been long enough since the Ben Affleck Daredevil that I wouldn't mind seeing him actually have a Daredevil movie. Everyone else could be a small screen kind of thing. We don't need Iron Fist at all, honestly. Iron Fist can just not exist anymore in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I agree.
We have Shang-Chi, and we can go that route, because Iron Fist is basically a white person who knows Kung Fu.
Exactly.
Like, we don't need that. But yeah, so that's pretty cool. I like that connection. I hope, again, I bring it further and go further with it and return Kingpin, which Kingpin's a major villain in Marvel Universe. So why wouldn't you put him on the big screen? But you also can have villains that only live in the small screen. I'm okay with that too. He might be one of those ones that's like, Clint's wife. The other question mark at the end of the series is whether or not Clint's wife. So Laura Barton, I guess there's two ways to think about this. She's either a former agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. or she is, the other thought process is that she's like best friends with someone or sisters or something with someone who his identity hasn't been revealed yet.
Right.
And it means a lot to her. So she wants this watch to make sure that this person's identity doesn't get let out. So the two theories out there right now is that Laura Barton's name isn't Laura Barton, that it's a what's it called when you get
Pseudonym.
no, but when you the government puts you in a hiding.
Oh, witness protection.
It's a shield witness protection name.
Right. Sure.
That you know, because Bobby, what the hell's her name? Bobby Morse is, I believe, I want to look that up. I don't want to have wrong information on this podcast, but is Mockingbird, who Hawkeye is married to in the comic books. Okay.
Yep.
Mockingbird was a shield agent. Barbara Morse. She was a SEALs agent who is also a Mockingbird suit, but she was also in the show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They had someone named Mockingbird, and they were going to do a spinoff show. It never got picked up and so on. So the idea, again, was that show canon or not, gets to that point where are they going to reboot Mockingbird, and Laura Barton actually was Mockingbird, and her real name is Bobby Morris, and she has a fake name because of, her and Hawkeye? Or is Bobby Morris really close to Laura Barton? Like, Laura Barton was best friends with her, and she just wants to watch back so no one knows that Bobby Morris was Mockingbird and that she's dead or she's missing or whatever it may be. So those two are pretty cool. I personally think the second one would be better, that she just knows that person, because Laura Barton doesn't need to be someone. Laura Barton can just be Hawkeye's wife and the parents of her kids and the family and all that stuff. Because it kind of like brings that scene where they go and see them on the farm the very first time. It brings different meaning to that scene, and I think it's retroly making that scene not meaning as much, because she's supposed to be this like great wife to Clint in his adventures, but it just seems like she's a homemaker and she's there, she's just doing her thing, and that she's just involved in this. I feel like she'd have a different input and a different say if she was a former agent. I feel like she'd be more involved in a sense. So I don't know. I like the idea of just having it be that she's best friends with Bobby Morris, Mockingbird, and she wants to watch match for that or whatever it may be.
Although it is interesting to think that like Hawkeye seems really comfortable leaving his kids with her with all of these people. So that part could fit in of like, that's why when he says, I got to do this, she's like, oh yeah, I know. Yeah. Get that wrapped up. I understand. Blah, blah, blah.
Which makes sense, because if she was just a former agent, even if she wasn't Mockingbird, she didn't have to be Mockingbird.
Exactly.
But the reason why that people have the theory that she's Mockingbird is if we watch that show episode again and zoom in on the screen grab the picture where the watch is, there's an agent number, and it was the same agent number as Mockingbird was in the comic book. So the idea is that this is Mockingbird's watch, whether it's Laura Barton Mockingbird or a friend Mockingbird. But you got a point there, like maybe if they find out whose watch this is, they know somewhere in the computer system is written where the house is, because was set up by S.H.I.E.L.D. or Nick Fury or whatever, and that could cause problems for the whole family in the long run. But maybe we'll find out in either Maya Lopez's show, or we'll find out, in the possibility of a season 2. We don't know. Like, there's no actual official word there. We knew at the end of Loki there was going to be a season 2. We know at the end of What If there is going to be a season 2. They have not announced a season 2 for Hawkeye yet. What would happen if they didn't? Like, is Kate Bishop just does she move into the big screen? Or do they have a season 2? The other theory is a Young Avengers thing.
Well, that's what I was wondering, if they'll do a thing where like a bunch of these younger characters come together. I mean, that'd be kind of fun.
Because I mean, we have met Ant-Man's daughter, who becomes a Young Avenger at some point. There is all that connection. There's Riri Williams is going to be getting one, which is she's the Ironheart. All those people. What I would love to see, and this is a personal love and thing, is so there's a younger version of Nova. So the Richard Rider Nova from back in the 70s is one version. There's a Young Avengers version of Nova that came out in the Young Avengers comic books years ago that is the idea of Nova coming onto the screen is coming. They have talked about that, whether it's going to be big screen or small screen, we don't know. So that would also be another character that I'd love to be introduced, because the selfish level, because my son's name is Nova. And I'd like to preface that by saying it wasn't after the comic book character. As many people as they think it probably was, it had nothing to do with the comic book character at the time. I had a brain fart and forgot even a comic book character named Nova existed when we decided on the name. But I think that'd be kind of cool too. So yeah, maybe they just bring her back to do another 6-episode series like they did with the Marvel and Netflix that they did Defenders. But
I did love the outro of episode 6 where she's like, Lady Hawk. Like
he's like
Hawk
no.
spot, Hawk shot. No, but I love that like he's like, well, I have an idea, and it goes Hawkeye and it ends. I was like, that was such a cool like way to say like we're
that leads up to why there should be a season 2, in my opinion. And season 2 could literally not feature Clint Barton at all.
I don't think it should.
It would just be Haley Steinfeld's show. It's her as Kate Bishop, and her little antics and so on and so forth. And at the end of that episode, she could meet. Well, she could also introduce people. She could introduce Ironheart. She could introduce.
Well, yeah, of course.
In her show, because she's already had an established show, and then that feeds off into their own shows and so on. So we'll see. But I am down. I'll sign me up for season 2. I was not on board with season 2 of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That show did its job.
At all. It did. Yep.
But I don't. No, I don't want that. So
did WandaVision come out in 2020 or 2021?
I thought it might have been the end of 2020.
It doesn't matter. I just was thinking like you. I was like of 2021 where like Hawkeye ranks. And if WandaVision was 2021, I would probably say
first episode January 15th, 2021.
Okay. Well, it's just because I'm with you. Like I think Hawkeye though, I think is one of like the best produced pieces in a series that they've made.
And I will say, you're right. WandaVision is up there. So they're the things is, if I almost want to say that they're different. They're 1A and 1B because Hawkeye is more your hour-long drama action movie, whereas they made WandaVision your half-an-hour sitcom style. So like if you think about it, it's like loving X-Files as a show, which I do, and then loving The Office. Like they're not the same, but they do their job. And so I think that like Hawkeye did its job as an hour-long thing, or hour-long, and then WandaVision did its more job as a half-an-hour thing. However, both those shows, we just mentioned 2 shows that basically introduced people who we've known for a long time, whereas like Falcon and the Winter Soldier were both characters that were not from the beginning. We obviously knew Bucky from Captain America 1, but he wasn't the Winter Soldier until the Winter Soldier TV show or movie. I mean, What If, a lot of new characters and new versions of characters came out and all that stuff. Hawkeye was from the original Avengers. Wanda, again, towards the beginning. So I don't know. Hawkeye to me, it's tough. I mentioned that too, but I do think at the end with the Vincent D'Onofrio thing and the introduction of a new character from recent times, 2005 is pretty recent times. I think that it just barely edged out WandaVision, and then right below WandaVision barely edged out to me is Loki. So it's I agree. Like 1A, 1B, 1C, and then it's What If has an entire. It's hard. You can't. It's not the same.
Well, because see, then you just said it. Like my favorite series now that you said, is What If. I mean, well, and the bigger point is maybe like we always say, the rankings maybe don't really matter. It's just that this is like a really, really good addition to the Marvel canon in the MCU, and I really felt like it was a really appropriate tying up of the Battle of New York, because like you said, there's other stuff we need to like move past it now, and like Black Widow and Natasha, and it's time to like stop talking about the Battle of New York and get on to other things. And this felt like that's what they were doing to me.
And so to be again to not harp on this, but the WandaVision to me we're still in the Infinity Saga. We're still dragging that on, that it was part of the Infinity Saga. And then same thing with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It's like, okay, you're still dragging that Infinity Saga out. Come on. Loki was like, okay, we're pushing towards the future. We're thinking multiverse. We're thinking it was the propaganda, quote unquote, to what's going on in the new future of Marvel. Hawkeye was the first live action series after the Infinity Saga that didn't really push the whole story far. Like we didn't go anywhere really. It was basically all within a couple of days, and it wasn't like world-changing events happened. But it introduced a new character while retiring an old character and pushed it forward. Like it's not like Taylor and I mentioned, one of the main reasons I wanted to go see Spider-Man in the theaters is it was a character that had already been introduced, and had a storyline, and it was continuing on. So we were still grabbing onto that Infinity Saga, love. Whereas like I didn't really want to go Shang-Chi or Eternals. I wasn't like chomping at the bit to go see them in the theaters, is because it was new characters where I'm like, it's going to take me a second to get warmed up to these new characters.
Yep.
You're changing something that I loved and I wanted to continue. I want them to make these movies forever.
Yep.
But Hawkeye did the both for me. And I think that's why it edged out everything else, because it introduced a new character.
I'll have to look up the article and give them credit, and we can post it on Twitter or something. But there was somebody who was talking about that musical post-credit scene, and they were saying how, every post-credit scene like hints at what's coming up. And this is the first one that it's just a scene. But what's crazy is it lets you know that like we've reached the point where the Battle of New York is a musical now. And so like that's the end. That's done. Like,
and again, it's history books, so you can mention it here and there, whatever you need to do. It was like the Battle of New York, or I met this person in the Battle of New York, because it's referencing older things, but you don't need to harp on it anymore. And honestly, at some point, we're going to have to stop harping on the snap. Hopefully this multiverse stuff is going to make us go, the snap was nothing. Like this multiverse thing might be like, oh my gosh, the snap was like, okay, half the universe died, to the point where everything could die because of this multiverse scrap. So that's what I'm hopefully looking forward to and stuff like that. So we'll see. I think that it, like I said, it did its job, and it was great. It was well filmed. It was well shot, well acted, well composed, produced, directed, all that stuff. And it did that. Let's just move the needle forward a little bit without jumping and pushing. And honestly, if you don't care, you don't have to watch this, and you're not really missing anything.
Well, and that's my thing. Like fans like us that watch it, like it doesn't really matter to like people don't need to know like, hey guys, like we're closing the book on Battle of New York. The big fans don't care. We get that like this show is subtle, but this show is like wrapping up the mental damage that these people suffered after the Battle of New York, the losses they had, the things they did during the blip, and like, okay, done. So like for us, I think that's a really cool way of doing it, not making it some like epic blockbuster thing.
Correct.
Like
because once the multiverse happens, if it does happen, once we see Kang the Conqueror in the Quantumanium or Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, you're going to want to know where this person came from. So you're going to have to watch Loki. And so there is this whole, like, Kate Bishop could just show up in another thing and you'd be like, oh, cool, so it's a new person. But nothing really happened in this show. We don't know yet. It could be something bigger.
Right.
But nothing really happened in this show that made it go, you need to watch this for source material.
Right.
The last thing I wanted to say before we sign off and go about our day is, do you think that Kate Bishop's dad is actually still alive? That's the other thing I was thinking is the theory in it, that he's actually still alive, and all this, her mom's doing all this stuff because she's trying to save the family because of all the stuff he did, and he's actually still somewhere. Some villain grabbed him and brought him, and maybe he's working somewhere else. It's a possibility he's just dead, but I just think that's a cool thing. It's one of those things that someone's died and life's changed because of the death of that person.
Of course. Yep.
That it could be in season 2 of Hawkeye with Kate Bishop, that she finds out he's alive and now she's trying to find him or something more grounded than fighting aliens at the end. Speaking of that, last thing, Transformers.
Yeah.
When aliens come into Chicago in Transformers 4, I think it is, it reminded me a lot of the Battle of New York when the aliens came through the portal there. It was just like these things flying through Chicago, and I'm like, that reminds me a lot of
hey man, all art is derivative.
And it's all pop culture nerdism stuff. So
exactly.
But that was fun. So we gave it we do the whole, when we were in the theaters, go see it in the theaters, go not go. It's worth watching now. If you're not a Star Wars fan, this is the time to watch Hawkeye, because we have some time between now and the next Marvel thing that's going on Disney Plus is when Eternals will hit Disney Plus on January 12th to watch at home for free with your Disney Plus subscription. But next Wednesday, or this Wednesday, the 29th, this comes out on a Tuesday, tomorrow night, is the Book of Boba Fett. So that, to me, is if you're a huge Star Wars fan, that's going to be, and if you like Mandalorian, I think you're going to like this. There's no question about that.
This seems like a direct successor to that.
Yes, it's in that world, it's in that universe of the Mandalorian. But if you're not, skip the Mandalorian or the Book of Boba Fett and watch
Yep.
Hawkeye because it is worth watching, in my opinion, for sure. So, I mean, Adam and I are both like, I Wednesday at some point, we're gonna be watching Book of Boba Fett. I cannot wait.
Well, my big Christmas present was the Lego Boba Fett helmet that's like 9 gazillion pieces. So like,
so you've been watching it, putting it together? No.
I haven't even opened the box because I'm going to turn on Book of Boba Fett and start building my Boba Fett helmet.
See, there you go. I'm excited. I'm really excited. If anybody's really
too.
into this, it's basically their gap between the next Mandalorian. There's all kinds of more Star Wars universe stuff coming out too, which we'll get into at some point.
Yes.
But we're looking forward to that one. Book of Boba Fett comes out on the 29th, as well as the 12th is Eternals.
Yes.
And then we'll see. And then Adam, at some point, we'll see Spider-Man and we'll do that one. But I'm okay. I'm not going to pressure it. We're not going to pressure Adam, especially with the Omicron variant and stuff like that. When it comes out on streaming.
Oh, I'm going to go in the next few days because I'm going to go to like a midnight showing by myself and I'll be cool. Because I can't wait, man. I'm like, knowing that you saw it is like driving me crazy. So no, just kidding. It's fun. And it's funny. I always find myself having to Google this when I'm watching the credits. There's 2 post-credit scenes for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. There's 2. There's a mid-credit scene and a post-credit scene, because it's one of those things I always go, I don't want to be the idiot who leaves mid-credits because I saw what I saw, but I also don't want to be the idiot who's just sitting there when everybody else is leaving and there's nothing at the end of it. So I usually just What was the movie recently that neither of us had watched the ending and we were like,
was it Venom? Was it the first Venom?
Oh, that might have been, but there was something that I'll have to look back. There was something.
It might have been the first Venom or the first or second Spider-Man. It was one of the ones where we like turned it off, and we turned it off, and we're just like, and then we find out like later on, we're like, oh my god, there was a second post-credit scene we need to watch, and it was great.
Oh, man, that was funny.
And then obviously in the theaters coming out soon is Morbius is in January, which is really cool. I was gonna see if we wanted to do some sort of reactions to the Matrix, but it seems like the reactions are just bad, so it's not really worth it. But we'll
I know
see.
I'm still trying
to figure some stuff out. I'm
still trying to talk myself into it, man.
I still want to do, and I've actually started putting them together. There's about 4 or 5 bad former Marvel movies or old Marvel movies that I don't think we should do their own individual episodes. But I think if we do one episode that's like Mystery Science 3000 in a sense, we're not going to rip the movies as they're going along. We're just a shit on the movies. I have now found the Fantastic Four movie from the early 90s. I have Nick Fury, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I have the old Captain America movies. There was a short film that was filmed, a Punisher movie. So there's the Punisher with Dolph Lundgren back in the day. But there was one called Dirty Laundry. There was like a 20-minute, 30-minute film. So there's all these different random movies that were not made like very well that I'd love to do some sort of series on that, which would be fun. But until then, we'll just do it.
I think that's great.
Stuff. Yeah.
So I think we should absolutely slog through the worst.
I think it's funny because of how good these things have been. It's like watching how bad they were. And it's just, we are so lucky nowadays to have what we have nowadays. Because I tell you what, if I grew up and my Punisher had to be Dolph Lundgren, or if I had to grow up and my Nick Fury had to be, I keep on forgetting his name.
Or your Captain America was a lawyer.
Yeah, that's the other one. Like, why? So people,
how do you skip the super soldier thing? Like,
so this is my big thing with this whole people when they go online and they're keyboard people who are just out there just shitting on everything. Oh, the comic book said this and the characters. I'm like, it could be worse. You could have them say, we're going to use the name Captain America and we're going to use the name Steve Rogers, but he's not going to be anything like the comic books. And they've done that in the past. They've done it for the other superheroes too. It's like, we're going to take this, but we're not going to do anything that actually exists for continuity in comic books. At least nowadays, they're trying their best to try to figure out a way to make it modern because comic books were made back when it was all white males. And they're trying to make them unique in their own thing, but also stick to the storyline. So it could be worse. And that's what we're thinking about with these old movies that never existed. Some of them didn't actually exist. Like
we're going to show you kids how good you got it now.
Yeah, see? But exactly. Well, I say that, but they haven't made a good Fantastic Four movie ever. So like the first one, we could actually watch them all if we wanted to, technically. But the Fantastic Four movie from the early 90s that never actually got released, that someone must have just found the footage and threw it on YouTube because
it looks like a fan-made film.
It does. Yeah, it's bad. So, but until then, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram, right? At Capes and Tights Podcast.
That's it.
Twitter at Capes Tights Pod, capesandtights.com. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all those things. Yeah, check it out. And check out other stuff too. We've got the Venom reviews that just came out recently. Spider-Man.
Yep.
If you're going to see Spider-Man in the theaters, listen to our Spider-Man one.
Say the
Listen to the
Spider-Man
Venom
would be
ones too.
perfect.
I don't care.
Yep.
We did reviews of What If, and we've
Yep.
done other reviews too. Why the Last Man. We talked to a director. So I was trying to think of what we could do to finish up the season. We've done a lot of cool things this year. So if you like to listen to people, interviews with people, we did showrunner Eliza Clark from Why the Last Man. I've talked to some authors this year. We've talked to all kinds of cool people. We've done reviews of movies. We've done previews of movies. We've done all kinds of cool stuff this year. So just check out whatever you want. You have some time off this week on the way to work or whatever. When other podcasts are on their break for the holidays.
There you go.
Listen to our stuff or share with friends.
And we got Star Wars coming up. I mean, we got a lot of good stuff coming too.
Yeah,
so
exactly. So 2022 is gonna be fun. And one of these days, Adam and I will be back in the same building when we're on the 17th or 18th variant of this stupid virus.
You told me that like 2 years ago when we first started doing stuff for a year and a half ago remotely.
We did
pretty soon. We've
done like 5 or 6 episodes in the same room. But other than that,
that's true. That's true.
It's harder when you're a world traveler like you are, right? I mean, come on.
I'm here in the big cosmopolitan town of Champaign, Illinois.
But until next time, I'm Justin. That's Adam. Have a good one, guys.
See ya.